Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Aysir judan walen sanin tamam nazreen within pend online team hintar pur khulus salam to dua. Umeed şu kaysu ठीक पठन यत्कन इफ्तिजार already announcement os kormut कि आज युश आज आयसून special session क्या है क्योंकि पत में लगभग रेह डोड़ रेत पैठन ऐसे total focus कराने में PhD special sessions तथ जिम्नस मज गीत pre recorded sessions या नई live sessions यम कर तम कर run तो अजुक सेशन सह स्पेशल क्योंकि अत मज रैप अप दिवान क्योंकि जनरली पे रिसर्च एस्पिरेंट्स तिहज रिसर्च अगर मेथडोलॉजी हज या बेसिक अप्रोच कत करो सह क्वालिटेटिव क्योंकि तीचा ज्यादा यह यूजुअली बहुत दपान हर कंस खतर एप्लिकेबल मगर यूजुअली तीत ट्रेन क्वांटिटेटिव अप्रोचेस मज कहें तो सोन मोस्टली सोशल साइंस ह्यूमैनिटी रिलेटेड सह क्वालिटेटिव So तथी related करो आज कत कि basic rap कि कित समझो करो understand qualitative research तथ सतन कित करो deal यित जन तुम already पाई छो सतन आज यथ सेशनस पे जुड़ेमुत डॉक्टर अथर जिया डॉक्टर अथर जिया कुन तारुफ मोहताज कहें तुम असल रेस्पॉन्स अत रिलेटेड दितमुत या युंद सेशन रिसर्च क्वेश्चन रिलेटेड सह रूद ज्यादा मुफीद पत्म वरी पे सो अथर warm welcome to you. Variya shukriya tuhund waqt khadr. Walaikum assalam warahmatullah. So I hand it over to you. I'll go in the background and I'll let you run the show. तो नाजरीन अगर तो कहाँ ते सवाल आसे especially यम सन PhD aspirants आसन यम वंकस तैयारी आसन करा please make sure कि तुम सोचो तुम सवाल comments इन मसन इंशाल्लाह ये presentation gets over तम पतन इंशाल्लाह करो इस तो take up करने की कोशिश. Okay, over to you.
Thank you so much. Seta shukriya Tausif. Bus varya khosh az ki is heko at qualitative research mutalik kat karit. मे कह स्लाइड्स कर्मित प्रिपेयर तुहंद खतर तो मे बासान 10-20 मिनट लगन ये सोरी करनस मज तैयार ना तो कत करनस मज यमन स्लाइडन मुतलिक तो मे बासान तम पत अगर तो कह क्वेश्चन आसन तो कह सवाल जवाब हेको तम पत करित इंशाल्लाह तो शुरुआतस मज युस यह गोडनुक स्लाइड जस्ट बह कर कशुर तो उर्दू तो अंग्रेज तो वन अस बथ पे तो जबान करो अख्तियार तो वनकस करुन फोकस क्वालिटेटिव रिसर्च पे युस मे पेंड ऑनलाइन टॉपिक दितमुत अत अगर गोडनथी तर्जम करो यह मयारी रिसर्च यह मयारी तहकीक यह मकदारी तहकीक कह अत मकदार वुचन अत कह मयार वुचन कुन चीजुक मयार वुचन तो तथ अराउंड आज कत करान तो आई थिंक आई हैव Tausif, do I have the controls for this slideshow or are you doing it?
I guess you should have it. If you aren't able to do it, please direct me. I'll keep.
Yeah, I'm not able to do it because I can't see any controls. So
All
the
right,
first thing,
inshallah, you just indicate.
Okay, I'll just say slide and then you move ahead.
Yeah, I'll do that.
So अगर अस गोडनेथ basic definition वुचो qualitative research क्या छ सु कह चीज कह human experience ऐसन सो तमुक nature understand करन the study of nature of phenomena कह त phenomena ऐसन अस कित छु feel करान अस कित कन छु वुचान कह चीज टीवी छा अस पसंद अस छा फोन पसंद मतलब लॉकट खत लॉकट सन ख्वाहिश तो बड़ खत बड़ ख्वाहिश कॉन्फ्लिक्टस मज कित कन छु लुक गुजर बसर करान सु छु नेचर ऑफ फिनोमेना पत छ अस आसान वुचन अमिच क्वालिटी यम चीज कित कन मैनिफेस्ट गसान यम कित कन यवान बोजन सनिस समाजस मज तो बे कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्या छ अमुक युस पस मंजर छ सु क्या छ तो पत कित कन अत पे वुचान सन पर्सपेक्टिव्स क्या छ अस कित कन परसीव करान मतलब ये रिसर्च यह नंबरों सत पकान यह रिसर्च कह इसलिए छो तुम अत रिसर्च में ज्यादा वुचान रेंज तुम फ्रीक्वेंसी वुचान तिथ कन तुम ज्यादा ऑब्जेक्टिविटी ठांडान कह बिकॉज अस सिंपल कॉज तो अफेक्ट अत मज वुचन कह अत मज वुचन रेंज ऑफ एक्सपीरियंसेस तो वार वार यह गोडनुक स्लाइड यह गथ थोड़ा अनफोल्ड बे ज्यादा सो अगर ना पे پیٹھ نظر دِمو گوٚو تُہۍ چھِو اَتھ منٛز پَران نیچر آف فِنامِنا تُہۍ چھِو اَتھ منٛز وٕچھان کوالٹی تُہۍ چھِو وٕچھان اَتھ منٛز أسۍ کِتھ کٔنۍ چھِ ایٚکٕسپیٖرینٕس کَران تہٕ اگر تۄہہِ پانَس سۭتۍ وٕنکٮ۪س یُس تۄہہِ گۄڈنِچ ایٚکسَرسایزَن دِمہو بہٕ تۄہہِ اگر تۄہہِ یِم وٕنکٮ۪س اَسہِ وٕچھَن وٲلۍ حاضریٖن ناظریٖن چھِ تُہۍ سوٗنٛچِو پانَس سۭتۍ کہِ تۄہہِ کیٛاہ چھُ رِسٲرٕچ کوسچن تُہۍ کیٛاہ چھُو یَژھان یَتھ پٮ۪ٹھ تُہۍ رِسٲرٕچ یَژھان چھِو کَرٕنۍ تہٕ سُہ تھٲیِو تُہۍ کانٹٮ۪کسٹَس منٛز سُہ تھٲیِو تُہۍ پَسہٕ منظرَس منٛز پَتہٕ دِیِو تُہۍ اَتھ ڈٮ۪فنِشنہِ وارٕ نظر تَمہِ سۭتۍ میلہِ اَسہِ تھوڑا سا لاسٹَس یُتھُے أسۍ کوسچن اینڈ آنسٲرسَس پٮ۪ٹھ واتو تَتٮ۪ن میلہِ اَسہِ تھوڑا رینٛج اَتھ مُتعلِق کَتھ کَرنَس تہٕ تۄہہِ یِیو برابر میٲنۍ کَتھ پنٛنِس پرٛوجَکٹَس منٛز سو آی تھِنک اِٹس ویری اِمپاٹَنٹ ایٹ دِس موٗمٮ۪نٹ یوٗ سٹاٹ تھِنکِنٛگ اباوُٹ وٹ یور پرٛوجَکٹ اِز تُہۍ کیٛازِ چھُو یہِ پرٛزَنٹیشَن آز وٕچھان تُہۍ کیٛازِ چھُو اَتھ منٛز اِنٹرٛسٹِڈ یِتھ کٔنۍ توصیٖف صٲبَن گۄڈَے ووٚن کہِ أسۍ چھِ یوٗجؤلی کالِٹیٹِو رِسٲرٕچ کَران تِکیٛازِ اَسہِ چھُ وٕنکٮ۪س یَتھ جنٛکچَرَس پٮ۪ٹھ سٲنۍ سوسایٹی چھےٚ سون کَلچَر چھُ اَسہِ چھُ واریاہ تِمہٕ موضوٗعات سٲنِس سماجَس منٛز یِمَن منٛز أسۍ یَژھان چھِ وٕچھُن کہِ أسۍ کَتہِ آے أسۍ کیٛاہ چھِ ایٚکٕسپیٖریَنٕس کَران ییٚمہِ برونٛہہ کوٚت چھُ اَسہِ گژھُن تَتھ منٛز چھِنہٕ آسان مٮ۪قدارٕچ تیٖژاہ ضروٗرت کینٛہہ مٮ۪قدار چھُ آسان مگر اَسہِ چھُ آسان معیار وٕچھُن تَمہِ چیٖزُک تہٕ یُتھُے أسۍ برونٛہہ پَکو بہٕ کَرٕ اَکھ زٕ مطلب ایٚگزامپٕلز تہِ دِمو تۄہہِ بہٕ ییٚمہِ سۭتۍ اَسہِ فِکرِ تَرِ کہِ بہٕ کَمِچ کَتھ چھَس کَران تہٕ فِلحال تھٲیتو تُہۍ یاد کہِ تُہۍ چھُو نیچر آف فِنامِنا اَتھ منٛز پَران دِس اِز دَ سٹڈی آف نیچر آف فِنامِنا کوالٹی تَمِچ مینِفیسٹیشنٕز تَمِچ پٔرسٮ۪پشَنٕز اوپیٖنِیَن سۭتۍ اَتھ فیٖلِنٛگٕس سلایڈ پلیٖز تہٕ یُس کوالِٹیٹِو رِسٲرٕچ چھُ آسان سُہ چھُ آسان یوٗجؤلی اِنٹَر ڈِسپلِنری سُہ چھُنہٕ آسان تُہۍ دٔپِو ہاڈ ساینسٕز فار ایٚگزامپٕل ساینسَس منٛز چھُ آسان یوٗجؤلی اِمپیرِکَل کوانٹِٹیٹِو سٹڈیٖز تِم تہِ چھِ آسان کوالِٹیٹِو پنٛنہِ اَنداز مگر تِم چھِ روزان پنٛنِسٕے ڈِسپلِنَس منٛز مگر یُتھُے تُہۍ کوالِٹیٹِو رِسٲرٕچ مُتعلِق سونٛچان چھِو یوٗ آر ناٹ اونلی تھِنکِنٛگ اباوُٹ وَن ڈِسپلِن you're not thinking about just anthropology you're not just thinking about sociology you're not just thinking about political science suddenly چھُو تۄہہِ آسان یِم سٲری ڈِسپلِنٕز تہٕ اَمِکۍ ٹوٗلٕز چھُو تۄہہِ آسان مۄیسر سو اِنٹَر ڈِسپلِنری چھِ یہِ ضروٗری آسان پَتہٕ چھِ آسان یہِ ٹرٛانٕس ڈِسپلِنری تہِ یہِ چھُ مارٕف تہِ گژھان اَکہِ ڈِسپلِنہٕ منٛز بیٚکِس ڈِسپلِنَس تُہُنٛد یُس تۄہہِ پَتہٕ فاینٔلی یُس تۄہہِ پرٛوجَکٹ بَنان چھُو تَتھ منٛز چھِ آسان سارنٕے ڈِسپلِنَن ہٕنٛدۍ ایلِمٮ۪نٛٹٕس تٔمۍ چھِ آسان سٲری ڈِسپلِن اَپنٲومٕتۍ یا میتھڈالجی تھرٛوٗ یا میتھڈ تھرٛوٗ یا کُنہِ فِلاسفی یا تھیوری تھرٛوٗ تہٕ کُنہِ ساتہٕ چھِ آسان یہِ پَتہٕ کاوُنٹَر ڈِسپلِن تہِ مطلب یہِ آسہِ اینتھروپولوجِکَل پرٛوجَکٹ یا سوشولاجِکَل پرٛوجَکٹ یہِ آسہِ نہٕ تَمِچ کَتھٕے مانان یہِ آسہِ بدل کینٛہہ وَنان سو آی ایم ناٹ سیٚیِنٛگ بدل کینٛہہ غلط آسہِ وَنان بٹ اِٹ وِل کِرٛیٹ سم مور نالیج اَ ڈِفرنٛٹ کاینڈ آف نالیج تُہۍ تھٲیزیو یہِ کاوُنٹَر ڈِسپلِن یاد اگر کٲنٛسہِ اَتھ مُتعلِق سوال آسہِ پِرٛژھُن یا سَمٕجھ آو نہٕ یہِ ہٮ۪کو أسۍ پَتہٕ تہِ تُلِتھ مگر وٕنکٮ۪س اگر بہٕ یَتھ سلایڈَس منٛز اَتھ پٮ۪ٹھ زیادٕ سَنہٕ أسۍ ہٮ۪کو نہٕ برونٛہہ پٔکِتھ کینٛہہ فِلحال تھٲیتو تُہۍ یِم ترٛےٚ کَتھٕ یاد کہِ تُہُنٛد کوالِٹیٹِو پرٛوجَکٹ آسہِ اِنٹَر ڈِسپلِنری سُہ ہیٚکہِ ٲسِتھ ٹرٛانٕس ڈِسپلِنری تہِ سُہ ہیٚکہِ کاوُنٹَر تہِ گٔژھِتھ اَتھ ڈِسپلِنَس سُہ وَنہِ اَتھ ڈِسپلِنَس دَپٮ۪س ژےٚ چھُے نہٕ کانٛہہ ڈِسپلِنٕے یِم ژٕ میتھڈالجی چھِ یِم چھَنہٕ لگانٕے کُنہِ سو دیر اِز سکوپ فار دیٹ اینڈ دیٹ اِز د بیوٗٹی آف سوشَل ساینسِز اینڈ ہیوٗمینِٹیٖز کہِ اَتھ چھِ آسان وٲنِج نا واریاہ بٔڑ یِم چھِ ہٮ۪کان واریاہ بوٗزِتھ پانَس خٕلاف تہِ سو دیٹٕس ویری اِمپاٹَنٹ سو ایز اے سیڈ نو سلایڈ یٹ ایز اے سیڈ کہِ تُہُنٛد کوالِٹیٹِو رِسٲرٕچ پرٛوجَکٹ ہیٚکہِ کرٛس کرٛاس کٔرِتھ ہیوٗمینِٹیٖز پٮ۪ٹھٕ سوشَل ساینس ٹُو فِزِکَل ساینس فار ایٚگزامپٕل مطلب بَیولاجِکَل اینتھروپالوجِسٹ یِم چھِ یا فورَنسِک اینتھروپالوجِسٹ چھِ تِم چھِ تُلان ساینس منٛز تہِ تھوڑا تِم چھِ تُلان سوشَل ساینس منٛز تہِ تھوڑا تِم چھِ تُلان ہیوٗمینِٹیٖز منٛز تہِ تھوڑا بَناوان چھِ پَنُن پرٛوجَکٹ سو اِٹ کرٛس کرٛاسِز یہِ چھُ موٗو کَران فرٛام وَن ٹُو اَنَدَر سو اِٹٕس اِنٹَر ڈِسپلِنری دیٹ ویز بیٛاکھ اَکھ کَتھ یہِ چھُ آسان یوٗجؤلی پُلٹِکَل ییٚمہِ ساتہٕ أسۍ کوالِٹیٹِو رِسٲرٕچ وٕچھو یہِ کَتھ یِیو تۄہہِ بار بار اَتھ ڈِفرَنٛٹ سلایڈَن منٛز تہِ بوزنہٕ کہِ یہِ چھُ یوٗجؤلی آسان پُلٹِکَل اَتھ چھِ آسان کانٛہہ پالِٹِکٕس پَتہٕ ناٹ نیسَسرلی گُڈ پالِٹِکٕس بیڈ پالِٹِکٕس یا یَتھ أسۍ مطلب وَنو sorry about that یا کانٛہہ کانٹرٛوٲرسی ضروٗری but there will be some sort of critical angle in your qualitative study that is why it is a qualitative study تہٕ بیٚیہِ آسان چھِ یوٗجؤلی اَتھ منٛز مَلٹِپٕل ایتھِکَل اینڈ پُلٹِکَل پوزِشَنٕز مےٚ باسان یِم سٹوٗڈَنٹٕس یِم وٕنکٮ۪س وٕچھَن وٲلۍ کٔشیٖرِ منٛز آسہِ تِمَن یی پوٗرٕ سَمٕجھ کہِ وٹ ایٚگزیکٹلی دِس میٖنٕز پٔرٹینِنٛگ ٹُو د politics that they are living under, pertaining to the ethical and moral and other kind of issues that you're surrounded by. Slide, please. The qualitative research kya cheez involve karan. Is karo overall nazar bay so that we know what we're talking about. Godnathi chuti atmas yus te cheez tu study kariu, tahqiq kariu tat pannis natural setting mas yus tat bilkul na yeten so aase. Tu gesiu to tu su parne. Tu ruju no dur ke. That is very important for you. When you are studying something qualitatively, toshu totan gatsun, toshu tatan bihun, toshu na sirf az bihun ya paga bihun ken toshu various kalas phenomena study karan pannis natural setting mas yus tat bilkul panun setting ase. Time pat is kara attempt to make sense ya interpret so phenomena. The pat kya is asli asan yasan wuchun, ashi yasan wuchun ki look kya samjhan at mutalik. What meanings do people bring to this particular thing that I'm studying? And what meaning does it give to the people? Panuin kya chuman rishta. Tat per chu tu tahqiq karan. Tu chu ne wuchan ke kus chu matlab kamis kaita TV che ekis gamas mans. Tu chu wuchan ke rishte kya chu TV wuchnas tu lukan mans. Cultures per kya asar chu pevan. Society per kya asar chu pevan. Shuren per kya chu asar pevan. Yimai yo to dur bozna. Yeh chu teh bihun, yeh chu teh lukan sit kath karin, tah chu pane TV wuchun, tah chu pane yiman lukan nish bihun, pane shuren nish bihun. Su chuna haftas maz gasan complete kya, su chuna don haftan maz gasan complete kya. To yus pat tuhund hadaf cha asan, tuhund focus cha asan, su cha asan non-numerical data. You're not looking for questionnaires and you're not looking for surveys. You're actually looking for non-numerical data. You're looking to gain an understanding of individual social reality, including understanding their attitudes, their beliefs, and motivations. It's a very tall order. It can happen, it cannot happen. In the end, qualitative research tells you that everything is subjective. Let's take it with a grain of salt. Magar main wo in panin ka. That's what we do in the end. Slide, please. तो अस कित कन हेको स्पॉट करित अस कित कन हेको दूरी वनित कि यह क्वालिटेटिव रिसर्च किन ना qualitative research generally include karan data in form of words than numbers. मतलब तोह छुन आसान यु वुचुन के फॉर एग्जांपल छना यम बज बज कंपनी साबन कंपनी शैम्पू कंपनी यम छुन कत लुक छ कम किस्मक शैम्पू इस्तेमाल करान कत लुक छ कम किस्म साबन इस्तेमाल करान यमन गछ आत मज ये लोशन आसन हु चीज आसन. They're actually looking for numbers. They want more and more and more data. They want numbers. They want more people to answer their questionnaires. But in a qualitative research, you're not really worried about numbers. You're not worried about kit look what din mein at jawab. Tuhun shu mayar matlab tu wuchu ki kit look na tu wuchu ki kaita look. 10 look ha 15 nafar ha 10 nafar ha ya 20 nafar ये तो sampling आसेव तिम क्या छ वना at मुतल्लिक at shampoo as मुतल्लिक tim kya chona at sabne mutalik. So I'm kind of using very trivial kind of examples. Ashna marketing research mutalik kath karan ke usually social science research includes marketing research because we'll talk about that. But I know most of you who are located in Kashmir zone right now, that probably might not be the most pivotal of your worries. You're more worried about cultural, ethical, social, political problems. So when you are picking up a project, you're actually looking at words rather than numbers. Switch qualitative research has akna so pehchan yath mano. The be used the information or mailo na to prisyu timan for example ke used to sawal timan prisyu. That is straightforward jawab. Timasan subjective jawab. Timasan tith jawab ki yimna is numbran maz hako tabdil kare. That information was asan feelings te, that information was asan impressions te, number asan ne tuta important to hindi khatra tat mas kya. So that is what is primary in qualitative research. You're actually looking for a very intangible thing. Yusna boz nahi, yusna athi lagi. So that's what you're grappling with. And it does look like Varyan Shubasan, there is a slide on talking about ki shayad qualitative research and scientific, and we'll talk about that. Why that is thought so and why it is not so, why it is actually very scientific, and how we make sure that the research and the information that we get is as valid as any empirical research out there. So what you're basically studying, and when you look at a study that studies how people think, how they feel, and what they say, that is basically qualitative research. And that's how you kind of spot the focus on words, the focus on feelings, impressions, rather than numbers, is what a qualitative research is about. Slide, please. अच्छा वहीं करो बस मेथडन हंस कथ इस करो नहीं इतन ज़्यादा methodology तो मेथडन में तूता difference किया time छु कम मगर we can take it up in question and answers मगर characteristics अथ क्या क्या चीज़ ची यम qualitative research में methods में similar चे तो इस करो वनी different methods हंस ती कथ गोडनिची कथ छि उसमें अम ब्रोह ति वन कि युस तुई डेटा कलेक्ट करियो सु करियो तुई फील्ड्स मज कलेक्ट सो हेक्यु न तुई हेक्यु न हिस्टोरिकल रिसर्च हिंद पठ कुन लाइब्रेरी तो कुन आर्काइव मज बिहित पत ततन परित तो ततन पनुन डेटा जमा करित यथ मज छु तुई बाज़ाब्त गसुन फील्ड्स मज तो सारी मेथड यम qualitative researching methods छि that those involve some form of going to the field, talking to the people. The pachu te asan paina research participant nish gatsun timan nish bihun tihind issues, the experiences bozin. Tuhun data shosa real time. It's not something that comes from the past. You're actually going to the people, talking to them, and getting the data. And then you're also making sure that you don't let your participants leave that geographical area, because तोशना तुम पन्निस सेटिंग मज वुचिन पन्निस तथ तनाजुरस मज वुचिन अगर तो फॉर एग्जांपल यह अक ट्रिवियल एग्जांपल मोबाइल फोन अमुक असर सानन शुरन पेट या गामन मज क्युत असर छु शहरस मज क्युत असर छु so it's if you take this as someone is saying Urdu mein hoti to mujhe samajh aata. It's very hard to kind of like go between three languages, but I'll try. So what actually happens is that you have to make sure that you get data in real time, which means that you have to have people who are ready to talk to you, and you go to these places. So one of the examples that I used जो यूज की थी इससे पहले कि मोबाइल फोन की कि इससे क्या असर पड़ता है सोसाइटी पे, कल्चर पे क्या असर पड़ता है. तो आपको उसी गांव में जाना है, उसी शहर में जाना है, वहां लोगों के पास बैठना है, आपको उनसे बात करनी है, उनका मोबाइल फोन देखना है, कौन कौन सा ऐप उस पे है, आपको उनके साथ दोस्ती करनी है. सो दैट इज व्हाट social science research is about. You go to that geographical zone. आप फिर देखते हैं कि टावर, सेल फोन टावर्स कहाँ पर है, उनसे क्या असर पड़ता है आसपास के लोगों पे या बिजनेसेस पे, या कहाँ पर शैडो एरियाज हैं, कहाँ पर सेल फोन रिसेप्शन है नहीं है, वहाँ लोग कैसे अपना डे टू डे गुजर बसर करते हैं. So all of those things you have to go and see in that geographical location, which is also called field work. So the third thing is your qualitative research methods include multimodal way of working. आप एक चीज से डेटा जमा नहीं करेंगे. आपका डेटा फॉर एग्जांपल सिर्फ इंटरव्यू से नहीं आएगा, ऑब्जर्वेशन से भी आएगा, आपका डॉक्यूमेंट से भी आएगा. सो देयर इज an n number of ways that you can gather your data. Interviews, in-depth interviews, going and being with the people for a long time, not just 1 week, 1 month. Sometimes people who are in this kind of research, मैं anthropology की बात करूंगी, people go for like 6 months to 10 years, and they are still working on something that they are not able to figure out. So it takes a long time. 10 years is kind of an extreme example. Magar shavari chun kuni gamit ekis normal anthropologists. It takes, I think anthropological research is the one of the most labor intensive research. It takes 6 years, 7 years for people to complete their project. Because you're not doing something that is very easily seen. It's an intangible thing. बहुत complex issues पे आप बात करते हो. So you are actually taking a complex issue and breaking it down into meaningful inferences. इससे क्या पता चलता है हमें? So that is what you're working towards. And because this is a very communicative method, it's not something that you do in an ivory tower, you sit in a library, you're actually being with the people. इसमें आपको लोगों के साथ ट्रस्ट भी बिल्ड करना पड़ता है, आपको जाना पड़ता है लोगों के पास, उनसे बात करनी पड़ती है, उनको अपना रिसर्च समझाना पड़ता है, दोस्ती भी होती है। लोग फिर इन एंथ्रोपोलॉजी इट्स वेरी कॉमन, स्पेशली फॉर वेस्टर्न यूरोसेंट्रिक एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट, टू गो टू डिफरेंट प्लेसेस इन द वर्ल्ड, एंड वो उतना वहां पर लोगों के साथ में हो जाते हैं कि some people even get married in those cultures, and some people come out and they look like those people because the immersion is so deep. So in the end, what you get is data that is very raw, that is very unadulterated, because you have read books, you have had documents, but then you've talked to people, and people have given you their data and they have told you what they are about. So your data is very raw, very unadulterated, but you're also educated in that culture, in that society, because आपने उनका literature भी पढ़ा है, आपने उनका जो डे टू डे शायरी, न्यूज़पेपर्स, उनका रेडियो भी सुना है, उनका टीवी भी देखा है. सो यू हैव अ होलिस्टिक व्यू, a 360 view of that particular society and the problem that you're looking at. So you're looking at a very labor intensive kind of research. It's not something that you go parachute in and come out with some numbers. That's not what you do. So slide please. Thank you. So what are the different kind of qualitative research methods? So these are only few. Some books will tell you more, and some might kind of like meld some of these together. So what I'm doing is I'm just giving you these 5 different ones that are tangibly different but are also overlapping in some ways. And sometimes when you finish your project, as you reach the end of your project, you will realize that I probably have done all of these in my project, and that can also be possible. But then in the end, it depends on how you're writing your project, which will decide the main way of how you're actually how much time you're spending, one, and how you're writing it, rendering it, which will decide which one of these becomes preeminent. But again, that's very contextual. So I hope, Tausif, are we good on time? Can you just give me an idea of uh,
Yeah, we're quite good. Take your time. And I was having quite some text as well that it's good. It's got a kosher must be continue because it's space it as a kosher priority rather than Beka language. These are the kind of texts that I'm actually receiving right now. So we're good.
okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. So Godnikus method let's talk about phenomenological method. Patgo grounded theory, patgo case study, patgo historical method, the patgo ethnography. So we'll talk about that, all of these. Slide please. Shahid Shwanan, Malinowski, we'll talk about that. I'll keep that in mind, and I'll talk about who Malinowski was, and he's the father of participant observation. Not exactly fieldwork. Fieldwork is tembro tikaran, beos tembro anthropology to geography kunui. We'll talk about that, but we'll also talk about what was not really right in that and how you can do things differently. So let's talk about phenomenological method first. Phenomenology, agar simple terms and वुचो, you go study a phenomena. मतलब कहाँ a particular cheese that is happening, let's try to understand what's happening. The sukut shubasan lukan. What is the experience of that particular thing? Again, let's take the entry of mobile phone into people's lives. It's a phenomena. The digital life, virtual life, internet is a phenomena. And studying internet, let's say some of you want to understand what's the effect. I mean, I'm using the word what, don't take it as a research question, I'm just using it in a very light manner. How has internet or how has the mobile phone affected our society? It's a very broad question, but we'll take it as an example. So it's a phenomenon. So you're trying to understand a certain phenomena that is happening in your society, that is unfolding in your society, and there are n number of ways to understand it. So there will be some people who would look at it very quantitatively. They'll be like, they'll want to know how many people actually have mobile phones, and they might also want to know, okay, how much do they earn, and how they have these different packages and all of that. They might want to know that, and that will go a very quantitative. So guys, why am mcdarus kun ke kata mobile phone so tam sit wanan tim dapan he kashir really digital banyam is let's say if the population is 8 million, about 5 million people have their own cell phones, and about like 3 million people have access to internet, and some have some access to internet. So they were a quantitative study. They're kind of like having this overall view, and then they will sell this data to, let's say, cell phone companies or the internet companies and say, hey, you have this huge market and these people are not introduced to it. So that's also marketing research. So they were a qualitative way of looking at internet and phones and their entry and foray into cultures and societies. بیاکھ اکھ طریقہٕ چھُ یہِ وٕچھنُک کہِ اَمہِ سۭتۍ کِتھ کٔنۍ بدلے أسۍ. And these days you see these Instagram accounts where there are these grandmothers, Kashmiri grandmothers, who are on the who are appearing on these short videos, and they're talking about whatever they're doing. Ya ranun, ya pevun, ya kanchu, banan wonan, ya kanchu, doikhar karan pannis grandchild's. So you see them, and then some of the grandmothers are also saying like, subscribe, and share button and all of that. So if one of you would be interested in how is our older generation changing, what is their relationship to this new technology, that could be a phenomenological exercise for you. That could be a phenomenological method for you. So in phenomenology, we actually are looking at how do we experience things and what's our perception of things. So again, it's a very intangible. It's not very straightforward. So you have different questions, different methods to get to it. So in a phenomenological method, again, you use observation and you use interviews, not just regular interviews. That's not how phenomenological research happens or method happens. So you go to that place, you talk to people for a long time, and you are actually not just asking them questions directly, but also observing them in their own setting. So for example, if you were to look at internet and grandmothers, and you were to look at mobile phones and grandmothers, you would actually choose a few households. You would go to a neighborhood, to a community, and say, hey, can I be with you? Shamas heka bh tohi nish bihit, subas heka bh tohi nish bihit, dohle heka bh tohi nish bihit. Bh wuchha tohi kith kan chu ye cell phone use karan. Bh wuchha ye grandmother cha heka use karit phone. Bh kar ha emis sit kath, bh kar emis sit relationship develop. So they have to allow you into their homes, and that's how phenomenological research happens, because you're actually intruding into people's lives, and that's another part of it. It's very time consuming, labor intensive, and then sometimes there are trust issues in different parts of the world. So you can kind of like we'll talk more about that. So example, agar is wechho phenomenological research hins, that means heko is which exploring lived experience. But when we lived experience kya go, example gai tamich zanan kith kin wars muz rozan em sat war chasan, how do they live? That khadr shuna they develop karan god gatsun war zone, pat karan develop that relationships, lukan sit kath karan, lukan muz bihun. And then you can ask them, yeah, a woman giving birth. Sudhik is this phenomenological method, like how do you feel, what happens, and the perceptions of the woman, of the people around. So that's also one of the methodologies. Yeah, death of a family member. Again, feelings are involved, opinions are involved, perceptions are involved. So phenomenological research is not always straightforward. And I kind of like chose like these 5 different methods, but in the end we will see ki sanim research project na tim chasna amalgam of all of these. Slide please. मैं कर इस्तेमाल लफ्ज या phrase lived experience क्या गई? Lived experience गई अक्कासी तुहंदन experience हन यम चीज तो experience छू करमी तमन हस अक्कासी कित कन छू तुय करान तिम कित कन छू वक्त तुय express करान तिम कित कन छू वक्त तुय implement करान सुई गई lived experience. It's a representation of experiences and choices of a given person, and the knowledge that they gain from these experiences and choices. Again, cell phone. Bh kith kan chas istemal karan, bh kith kan chas represent karan, em kith kan karnas bh change, em kya choice this mein. A lot of people do their banking, they write. A lot of people did not write before. Now a lot of people write. If you look at Facebook posts, a grandfather who probably, so I said cheat lekhe so yem sat retire getsa kanse relatives ya tit karihana ki. Now he's writing Facebook posts, he's commenting on other people's posts. So it's giving people choices. How are these choices changing him? And what knowledge is this particular grandfather gaining from these experiences and choices? And how is that changing this part of our society? And how is that affecting our bigger society? So that's a lived reality, that's a lived experience using of these cell phones. And again, I'm using this as a very light, very trivial kind of an example, and I know that all of you have different, but it's a very easy example to engage with. So lived experience, agar أسۍ اَتھ متعلق بیٚیہِ آسہِ کَتھ کَرٕنۍ, it's something that you are living, ییٚمِچ عکٲسی تُہۍ کٔرِو یُس اَسہِ پَتہٕ نیٚبٕرۍ پٔرسٮ۪پشنَس منٛز بوزنہٕ یی, تہٕ بیٚیہِ یہِ تۄہہِ پانَس تَتھ متعلق آسیو ایکسپیٖرینس, یہِ ریٖسٲرچَر پرٛژھو تۄہہِ, دَپیو کہِ اَمہِ سۭتۍ کیٛاہ اَثر گوٚو تۄہہِ, تُہۍ کِتھ کٔنۍ چھُو یہِ اِستعمال کَران, یہِ کیٛازِ چھُو تۄہہِ 24/7 سۭتۍ آسان یہِ فون, اگر وۄنۍ تُہۍ یہِ پَتھر تھٲیِو اَمہِ سۭتۍ کیٛاہ گژھِ, تہٕ اَمہِ سۭتۍ کِتھ کٔنۍ پیوٚو تۄہہِ باقیَن رِلیشَنشِپَن اَثر, how is your relationship with your spouse after you have access to this phone, تُہۍ چھُوا زیادٕ ٹایم بِتاوان اَکھ أکِس سۭتۍ کِنہٕ کَم بِتاوان, باقیَن فیملی مٮ۪مبرَن پٮ۪ٹھ کیٛاہ اَثر پیوٚو. So you're not just reading it and talking about this in one day, you're actually doing this for years on end. تَتٮ۪ن چھُو نا تُہۍ بایس تہِ ختم کران, تِکیازِ تۄہہِ ہٮ۪کنو لُکھ کینٛہہ تہِ ؤنِتھ اِنٹروِو وِز, but then you observe them and you actually see کہ یہِ چھا صحیح کِنہٕ یہِ چھُ غلط. تہٕ تَتھ متعلق کرو أسۍ بیٚیہِ کَتھ کہِ أسۍ کِتھ کٔنۍ چھِ پوٗرٕ وٕچھان کہِ اَسہِ چھا سون ڈیٹا چھا ویلِڈ کِنہٕ نہ. سلایڈ پلیٖز. پَتہٕ گوٚو بیٛاکھ میتھڈ, تَتھ چھِ وَنان گرٛاوُنڈِڈ تھیوری میتھڈ. یوٗ نو موسٹ آف د ریٖسرچ, اسپیشلی کوانٹِٹیٹِو ریٖسرچ, تِم چھِ تُلان اکھ تھیوری, تِم چھِ تُلان اکھ سکوٗل آف تھاٹ, تِم چھِ وَنان پَتہٕ دَپان یہِ بہٕ وٕچھِ گراوُنڈَس پٮ۪ٹھ, بہٕ کَرَن یہِ فِٹ اَتھ, میون ڈیٹا گژھِ فِٹ گژھُن یَتھ تھیوری. گراوُنڈِڈ تھیوری چھُ اُلٹہٕ کران, سُہ چھُ گژھان اَتھ کُنہِ فیٖلڈَس منٛز, پَتہٕ چھُ سُہ وٕچھان تَتہِ کیٛاہ چھُ سَپدان, لُکھ کِتھ کٔنۍ چھِ کَتھ کَران پانہٕ ؤنۍ تَتھ پرٛوجَکٹَس مُتعلِق یُس تِمَن پرٛوجَکٹ چھُ. پَتہٕ چھِ تِم سُہ ڈیٹا جمع کَران, پَتہٕ چھِ وٕچھان اَمہِ منٛز کۄس تھیوری نیرِ. تھیوری چھِ گژھان اِمٲرٕج ڈیٹا منٛز, تَتھ چھِ وَنان گرٛاوُنڈِڈ تھیوری میتھڈ. سُہ چھُ آسان کوالِٹیٹِو ریٖسرچ. سو جنریشن آف تھیوری وِچ از گرٛاوُنڈِڈ اِن ڈیٹا, کہِ تُہُنٛد ڈیٹا کیٛاہ وَنہِ تۄہہِ. تہٕ بہٕ اَمِچ ایگزامپل تہِ دِمو زَن, اگین اِٹس اَ ویری لایٹ ایگزامپل, اِٹس اَ ویری ایٖزی ایگزامپل ٹُو انڈرسٹینڈ, بٹ ہوپفُلی اِٹ ول میک سینس. کُنہِ سکوٗلَس منٛز چھِ سٔتمہِ ہٕنٛدۍ شُرۍ فیل گژھان میتھمیٹِکسَس, سٲری چھِ گژھان فیل, یا سم یا موسٹ میجارٹی. Now it's a conundrum. People are thinking like یِم چھا سٲری شُرۍ, یِمن چھُنہ تگان میتھس, یِم چھِنہٕ شاید intelligent, یِم چھِنہٕ شاید smart شُرۍ. And then the management probably wants to look at this. They want to understand. تہٕ تِم چھِ أکِس دۄن ریٖسرچرَن وَنان, دَپان چھَس تُہۍ بِہِو یِمن سٹوٗڈنٹَن سۭتۍ, تُہۍ کٔرِو یِمن سۭتۍ کَتھ, یِمے چھِ اِنگلِشَس منٛز تہِ اَصٕل, یِمے چھِ اُردوَس منٛز تہِ اَصٕل, یِمے چھِ کٲشرِس منٛز تہِ اَصٕل, میتھَس کیٛاہ چھُ یِمن گژھان, اَسہِ کیٛازِ چھُ 7th منٛز یِم شُرۍ میتھَس فیل گژھان, let's say. So then a qualitative researcher will go and they will choose to stay in the school. تِم آسان صُبحس برابر 9 پٮ۪ٹھ 3 تانۍ یِمن شُرٮ۪ن سۭتۍ روزان. تِم ہٮ۪کن پَتہٕ گرٕ تہِ گٔژھِتھ یِمن شُرٮ۪ن سۭتۍ, یہِ وٕچھنہٕ خٲطرٕ کہِ یِمن کیٛاہ اَثر چھُ پیوان اَتھ میتھ ہوم ؤرکہِ پٮ۪ٹھ, یِمن why are we getting these consistent results, یَتھ منٛز یِم شُرۍ پوٗرٕ ؤرِیَس they are not faring well in mathematics. So a qualitative researcher will not say کہ oh you know یِم پٔتمہِ ؤریچہِ کِتاب آسہٕ تِم آسنہٕ, تَتھ منٛز ٲسۍ یِم سوال, سُہ مُمکِن چھُ یِم شُرۍ چھِ تَوَے یِمن چھُنہٕ سُہ سَمٕجھ یِوان, تہٕ مُمکِن یِم چھِ تَوَے فیل گژھان. What they will do is they will keep everything aside. تِم سونٛچنٕے نہٕ تَتھ مُتعلِق, تِم سونٛچنٕے نہٕ کُنہِ سٹڈی مُتعلِق, پَرن سورُے مگر پَتھ کُن تھاوان, چھِنہ وَنان سُہ کٲشِر پٲٹھۍ پیٖرٕ سٕنٛز قدٕر ژوٗرٕ سٕنٛز رٲچھ, پَرن تِم سورُے, پیٖر چھِ سورُے نالیج مگر بروسہٕ کَران نہٕ کُنہِ پٮ۪ٹھ. So they will go to the school, they will stay with the students. تِم تۄہہِ پٮ۪نو تَتھ خٲطرٕ باضٲبطہٕ اِجازت ہیٚنۍ, تَتھ خٲطرٕ چھُ باضٲبطہٕ رِوِو گژھان یوٗنیورسٹِیَن منٛز کہِ تُہۍ کِتھ کٔنۍ کٔرِو تِمن سۭتۍ کَتھ, کوتاہ چھُ تِمن ہُنٛد تۄہہِ کَنسٮ۪نٹ ہیوٚن, لیکھِتھ چھا کَنسٮ۪نٹ ہیوٚن, ؤربلی چھا کَنسٮ۪نٹ ہیوٚن, سُہ چھُ سوال دیٖگر. بٹ you will go to the school, stay with the students for a semester یا 2 semester, and then you'll kind of study and you'll see Human catch relation, it's a math teacher's problem, it's a kitabin his problem. You will ask the students, toh kya chu zarurat, toh kya chu resources already, what are you finding difficult? So it will be a very labor intensive way of understanding this particular problem. At the end of it, you will have so much data, and then you will sit and you will try to make sense of it. So you did not have a theory which is kind of like to which you are fitting the data, but you actually get the data and then you tell the management ki mish basan you see kitab yaman to implement karmas chho, this is not working with what they have studied last year, you want to gap tatmas, you mention basics. So you can say that, or you might find out ki teacher chan theek, the teachers are not trained in the new books that have been adopted. So it can be anything. So you will get the data and then you will, a theory is going to emerge out of that data, not the other way around. So that is grounded theory method, that your data dictates what kind of theory and what kind of thesis emerges. Slide, please. Pad go byak tariqe ikhtiyar hekiu karit qualitative research mein, so go case study method. Case study, it's very self-explanatory, in-depth investigation. Yeah, individual since dalil aise, ya aise group which dalil, ya aise institution which dalil, ya aise event which dalil. So in this case study method, you can choose ki I'll just study one person, one grandmother somewhere. Who has been using this cell phone, you went thoda blog tichakaran, you skat tichakaran, Instagram aspect. So you can kind of like in-depth study her in her home, within her family, and kind of look at what she has been doing. Case study chi usually asan to understand a current moment. The case study with history, which it's not used to understand the past. It's usually it's usually used to understand something that's happening now. And again, in detail, chuti wuchan, why, how, and what. Why is it happening? How is it happening? And what is actually happening? And what is also answered in quantitative research. And these are overlapping things. Don't think ki quantitative research ni yum cheez answer kara, but not in depth the way you do it in a qualitative study. So in a case study method, you might want to just choose one person, you might choose an institution, or you might choose, for example, you have mathematics example, Nimois. People are like, there are like 10 schools that are human student fair karan well in mathematics. So you might not choose to do all the schools, you will just choose one school and choose to study that particular school in a case study method. Kitab the students, them students common kind of social background, so you will in depth look at the patterns that are happening in that particular moment to understand that particular situation. Again, you're going to that place, you're talking to people, and then you're also looking at documents, historical evidence, of course, but then you arrive at a conclusion after you're getting this data. Slide, please. So historical method go yetantui past events karan chu study, but to understand a current phenomena. The atman should historical data to use, but you're also talking to people. So it's not a purely history method. It history study history some might go to different geographical locations, but it's not necessary for them to talk to people. They're actually looking at archives and documents and written records. But in a historical method, in a social science, as a social science methodology, you're actually trying to look at study of past events to understand a current phenomena. And it can also be vice versa. Social science is really good in that form. You can do things, you can change things. So you will use historical data and you will talk to people to arrive at a certain conclusion. For example, you swing FIFA World Cup that happened in Qatar, which is a Muslim country. So you can actually study that to plan some future event, to see how does a Muslim culture affect games. What happened to the spectators? There was this lot of speculation around drinking, alcohol drinking, consumption of alcohol, and then the rowdiness of the spectators. A lot of people said because alcohol is not so openly drunk in Muslim societies. Of course, it's present in many Muslim societies, and in many societies it's completely prohibited. So a lot of people said that spectators are very disciplined. They were not losing it, and they were not getting into brawls and fights, and they were not littering the stadiums. So it's a very current thing that has happened, but you can actually use this and study the past events, and then use it to predict what kind of venue or what kind of country should be chosen. This is again a very light-hearted example. So that could be a historical method where you're using the study of past to understand a current phenomena to predict something that is going to happen in future. So that would be a historical method. Slide, please. And then this is very close to my heart, because this is what I do, and I do all of them that I just said. Ethnography is it's study of people. Ethno and graphy, writing, documenting about people. So you're recording and analyzing based on field work. So you go to a certain place, like I'm an ethnographer, because anthropology heavily uses the method of ethnography, and we use all of those methods as well. But ethnography is kind of different, that it intensively goes to the field and stays and immerses itself. And then it not just observes, but it also does participant observation. Participant observation go, study how the grandmother is using the phone. I will not only study her using the phone, talk to her, but I will actually experience how she does all of this. So when she's making her videos, I will be there. When she is reading on the phone, I will be there. I'll ask her questions. I will participate in her experiences. That is participant observation. And one of you mentioned Malinowski. He is called the father of participant observation, because he was the one who go Trobriand Islands, because of World War II. He was an Austrian, and he could not go back to London School of Economics, it's Paranos, because he suddenly became an enemy. Then he had to go to Trobriand Islands. It's thoda field work was already karan. Magar temis pe pata hai don varian rosen, doras varias don varian, because he couldn't go back to London School of Economics. So as a result, he immersed himself in the local culture. Subut taite varias skalas, but tem tro pat mas gasan colonial city gasanes imas pat pewan alag imas pewan jan jain imas asan hotels imas asan cottages is kanta kashir mas de which mit aise kashir mas jus emporium chu, so it belonged to the colonial British administration. I don't know if the viceroy or someone who would stay there, so they would have buildings in these places. So then these anthropologists and these ethnographers, they would stay in these places. Magar Malinowski and kya kar kam, tem tro panun camp to panun tent ati sugo to beaut pat natives and so pun bukar ati participant observation. Bu vichim kit kanche behwanim kit kanche khwanim kit kanche watham behwanim and kya rish the panwen. So that's participant observation. Magar take it with a grain of salt. Each varia Eurocentric way of presenting what anthropology is. That varia critiques. Malinowski also said with Nafarke. There is a lot of controversy around what he wrote, what he thought, but I think that's something we can take up in question and answers. I'm just asking you, don't be too taken in by this very romanticized version of what Eurocentric academia tells you. I'm called asal ethnography karan. So you see one pinch but shukara parent online teach ethnography. So then, kind of like looking at the formal definition, ethnography means shoote karan observation, to shu look at cheese and mushahid karan wuchan, participant observation, to shu pan tatmas shirkat karan, but shu interview karan. Go his grandmother sit yuthi bihu to kari his interview. Magar interview chun asan pat sign interview chun tem asan ke tu look kalam ta kagas pat leak iti notes. That's not what we do, because you are in the field for a long time. You have conversations. I remember when I was doing my field work in Kashmir, my mother, she did not really understand what kind of a research I was doing. And she would call me at 5 o'clock, and I had a young daughter at that time, and she would say, 5 baje sona kur che vadan. I would say I'm working. And she'd say, "Nancy, I don't really understand what you're doing because you're just talking to people. You're visiting people's homes. You are in their homes. You are being with them." Because that's what anthropology/ethnography does. You go to people, you be with them, you talk to them, and for some time you actually become them, which is not a good way to put it. And I'll tell you why in Q&A, because we can't really represent people's aspirations if you're just joining them for a short while, even if that short while is years. So but you do become a part of them, because that's what your goal is, to understand from inside out. So then you write a written account of these people, these cultures, these spaces, these institutions. So then there are two forms of ethnography, and this will make sense to a lot of you. Age conventional to descriptive ethnography. Yitkan Malinowski and Liu. So go to O'Brien Islands, the them kurtaman Argonautan mutalik timan hund gift giving systems and all of that can understand the Liu kundat mutalik. The traditions, the cultures, the beliefs. So gay conventional ethnography या descriptive ethnography. मगर पच्छ critical ethnography. Critical ethnography छ आसान political. Critical ethnography छ आसान योस understand छ यत्सान कारण कि oppressed peoples in his situation. You look repression astal आसान tim in his situation, underdog in his situation. The أس يت كن هگوك تم understand करिت تم क्या छ यत्सान तो बेचim tim luk आसान यमन न zah ditmut छुक आसान कुन तिजाय छुक न आसान तिमन ditmut बोलना. And you kind of like enter those societies, enter those communities, and understand what they're saying, and then you try to render that and contribute to their liberation, whatever their liberation might be: political liberation, social liberation, economic liberation, whatever it is. So they critical ethnography. That must be asan lukan nish gasun bihun immerse karun pan varhas kalas to understand a certain political situation. So many of the anthropologists who work in war zones, rather than doing conventional descriptive ethnography, they are actually doing critical ethnography, because they are actually describing what these cultures and societies are, but for the goal of understanding what these people are actually saying through a political lens. So that is why I feel like ethnography becomes a better tool to understand. But then ethnography also, as is the nature of social science, you use other tools as well. You might use case study in your ethnography. You're already using phenomenological methods. You're already using grounded theory as well. So your project in the end becomes an amalgam of all of these different multimodal approaches. Slide, please. So वारियां लुकन हुन वनुन छु यम hard sciences करान छि या अख बड़ लड़ाई यस academia मस वुनुस्तान चलान छि सो sociology has such scientific the anthropology chun scientific. This is one of the biggest kind of controversies. It's kind of going away, but it has been there for a long time. Because anthropology, binimetan time chi example because which is pan anthropologist, anthropology chi zyada baros karan lukan his kaith pe pat chu istami mans karan ये पजर आसान छु. Sociology छु वारिया खुश करान questionnaire दिन, survey दिन, qualitative data anun pata lukan sit kath karin te. Ethnography is also part of their toolkit, but us छु primarily ethnography karan, लुकन सित कथ करान, लुकनी पे ज्यादा भरोस करान कि यम ये कथ वनन सो आस न गलत के सो unadulterated data. तो वारियां लुकन हुंद वनन ओस now it's changing, but varhas kalas tan es wana ki yus qualitative research che so na sachan scientific asan because iman chuna data khatr iman chun kahin takat data khatr. But that's not really true. The truth is कि people's emotion, yes, qualitative research is such emotion based, experience based. Emotions are not wrong. Opinions are not, opinions might vary, differ, but opinions is a valid form of data. So it's kind of like the difference between left brain and right brain. Left brain to practical, number based. So go quantitative. The right brain to creative, so imaginative, so emotion based. Such a qualitative research. It's not one okay, left brain is better than right brain. So that's something that you have to consider when you have to argue कि, why am I doing qualitative research? मैं क्या I'm telling you, मैं क्या mayori research karan. You're doing it because you want to get at an untangible truth that cannot be rendered from numbers, that needs people's emotions, that needs people's perceptions, that needs people's creativity and imagination. तम पत क्या छो तुई करन यु सोरे डेटा तु जमा छो करन तु छु पति triangulate करन तु छु नहीं पत तुलान इथे कहीं तु छु दपा यो छु puzzle. No, you have methods, and we'll talk about what the methods are to really sift the data and understand and analyze the data, and then say ki this is what I found out. And we don't really become final, in hard sciences, matlab sciences to chupanas but bada arrogance ke buchu sahi wana har dosh different research tat mutalik yawan to ti chwana ke is chwanan a puzzle har do. But that kind of arrogance you don't find in social science qualitative research or humanities qualitative research. That's not present there. Qualitative research takes everything with a grain of salt. And that's why the research is also very grounded in facts, and that's why the research is contextual. Yus ekis jai khatra pazar aa su chun bekis jai khatra pazar. For example, palman his kath karo. Matlab yuthe is western society mas wuchan chu kus kit palaw chula, it's not really connected to morality. So we can't really take that particular lens and apply it to our societies where Pallavan morality is really connected together. So it's very contextual, it's very location based, your qualitative research, and it kind of changes from place to place, which is also it's one of the beauties that social science research has. Slide please.
Sorry to intervene. I gave लगभग 5 मिनट तो maybe next 10 मिनट में अगर इस करो round up तब तक तो लो इस Q&As क्योंकि तो है तो time time but consideration. So 50 minutes are already over. Yeah.
Okay. So let me just breeze through these quickly. The Thomas qualitative research how to why wuchan. Kyutti kyaze. The big kya phenomena. So this is just to kind of sum it up. It might not appear hyper scientific initially, like you think kath karne gesiyo to bihu kun jai ishan wasa scientific immediately ki to mashu tuman gasan ke tools het pat wuchan temperature wuchan tuman his kath bozan tat pat coding tati garan. That's not what we do. So it doesn't look hyper scientific at first because we're not looking at cause and effect and relationship between variables. We are looking at a certain phenomena and then seeing how this phenomena dictates what is happening in that particular society. So you are attempting to identify how and why, and also what, and how this. And your problem is not how many times does this phenomena occur. Your problem is why does it occur. Slide, please. ये छ असल एग्जांपल ये सोचने खतर कि क्वालिटेटिव तो क्वांटिटेटिव क्या डिफरेंस छ अगर तो पेंटिंग छो अप्रेज करन या तो निमो एग्जांपल्स ऑयल पेंटिंग हिज क्वालिटेटिव डेटा विच ये कम रंग छ ब्लू ग्रीन. This is what on the left side you have what qualitative data is, and on the right side you have what quantitative data is. Qualitative data chu blue green color, gold frame, smells old musty, texture shows brush strokes of oil paint, peaceful scene of country, masterful brush strokes. मगर quantitative data chu wuchan picture chu 10 by 14, frame chu 14 by 18, weight chu 8.5 pound, surface area chu 140 square inches, cost chu 3. यह छ difference qualitative to quantitative asmas. मतलब you wuchu the qualitative data yapar chu वारिया subjective te, because to some people rangas te as farak. Can consider each poor green. So kairat qualify as a different kind of green. So qualitative data tends to be subjective. Again, there are ways to understand ke tammanz pazar kadun. So quantitative research usually is very good at finding out what, who, and how many times, like the recurrence, numerical data. But the qualitative data is non-numerical, and it's based on opinions, perceptions, and emotions. Slide, please. The limitations catch qualitative research has. تُہۍ چھُو نہٕ generalize ہٮ۪کان کٔرِتھ زیادٕ کینٛہہ because it's so contextual, it's so sometimes hyper local کہِ أسۍ چھِ اَکی چیٖزٕچ کَتھ کَران أسۍ چھِنہٕ ہٮ۪کان یہِ apply کٔرِتھ پوٗرٕ general یِژھن سُچویشنن باقین جاین تہٕ بیٚیہِ چھِنہٕ أسۍ ہٮ۪کان زیادٕ quantitative predictions کٔرِتھ کینٛہہ کہِ کۭتۍ لُکھ ہٮ۪کن ییٖژاہ صابن یہِ شیمپوٗ اِستعمال کٔرِتھ that's not what we kind of like are able to predict. تہٕ بیٚیہِ چھِنہٕ اَسہِ آسان تِتھ کٔنۍ hypothesis theory یۄس أسۍ test آسہِ کَرٕنۍ because we kind of like we have grounded theory so we are not really bothered by these things. تہٕ بیٚیہِ چھِ آسان data collection تہٕ پَتہٕ تِہُنٛد تجزیہِ چھُ آسان واریاہ time consuming as I said. تہٕ بیٚیہِ چھِ آسان اَتھ منٛز potential یُس اَسہِ وٕنکیٚس واریاہ لُکھ وَنان تہِ چھِ یَتھ أسۍ ڈِفینڈ تہِ کَران چھِ کہِ potential چھُ researcher bias تہٕ بیٚیہِ چھِ آسان یہِ واریاہ subjective یہِ چھِ آسان بِلکُل نہ مطلب یہِ چھُ نفرٕ سٕنٛدِ ذہنہٕ منٛزٕے نیران in that sense. مگر تَتھ چھُ اکھ بوٚڑ ڈِفرَنس یہِ کہِ سُہ کُس ریٖسرچ چھُ یُس نہٕ کٲنٛسہِ ہٕنٛدِ پٔٹِکیوٗلر ذہنہٕ یا لوکیشنہِ منٛز نیران چھِ تہٕ یُس ریٖسرچر بایس چھِ تَتھ خٲطرٕ چھِ اَسہِ واریاہ میتھڈس یِم ٹرٛاینگولیٹ أسۍ ہٮ۪کان چھِ کٔرِتھ ییٚمہِ سۭتۍ اَسہِ ڈیٹا پَتہٕ صحیح روزان چھُ تَتھ منٛز چھِنہٕ تیٖژ بایس آسان کینٛہہ بیٚیہِ چھِ أسۍ بار بار وَنان پنٛنہِ ریٖسرچ منٛز کہِ میون بایس کیٛاہ چھُ میٲنۍ پُزِشنیلٹی کیٛاہ چھُ بہٕ کُس چھُس یَتھ ریٖسرچ منٛز تَمہِ سۭتۍ تہِ چھُ ریٖڈرَس تران فِکرِ کہِ اَتھ منٛز کوتاہ اَتھٕ چھُ یا اَتھ منٛز کوتاہ ذہن چھُ أمِس ریٖسرچرَس پَنُن تہٕ بیٚکہِ سٕنٛز کَتھ کۄس چھِ سو وی آلویز آر ویری آنیسٹ اباؤٹ دیٹ. سلایڈ پلیٖز. یُس مےٚ ٹرٛاینگولیشن ہٕنٛز کَتھ کٔر تُہۍ ہیٚکِو مَلٹِپل میتھڈس یوٗز کٔرِتھ تۄہہِ کٔرٕو أمِس گرینڈ مَدرٕ سۭتۍ کَتھ أمۍ سٕنٛدِس موبایل فونَس مُتعلِق یہِ کِتھ کٔنۍ چھِ یہِ اِستعمال کَران یہِ کِتھ کٔنۍ چھِ وٕچھان یہِ أمۍ سٕنٛدِ زِندگی پٮ۪ٹھ کیٛاہ اَثر پیوٚو مگر تُہۍ چھُو نہٕ پَتہٕ صرف أمۍ سٕنٛزٕے یٲژ کَتھ بوزان کینٛہہ تُہۍ چھُو باقیَن لُکَن سۭتۍ تہِ کَتھ کَران کہِ یہِ کِتھ کٔنۍ چھِ اِستعمال کَران یہِ کیٛاہ ٲس برونٛہہ کَران وۄنۍ کیٛاہ چھِ یہِ کَران پَتہٕ چھُو نہٕ تُہۍ یوت بوزان کینٛہہ تُہۍ چھُو پَتہٕ ریٖسرچ تہِ اَنان رٔٹِتھ پَتہٕ چھُو تُہۍ سُہ ریٖسرچ تہِ پَران پَتہٕ چھُو تُہۍ وٕچھان أمِس کیٛاہ اوس رِلیشَنشِپ ٹی وی یَس سۭتۍ سو یوٗ آر ایکچُلی یوٗزِنگ a lot more sources than just one person to understand کہ اَمہِ phenomena ہُنٛد essence کیٛاہ چھُ so that is very very important for you. اَتٮ۪ن ہیٚکِو نہٕ تُہۍ کٕہٕنۍ ؤنِتھ پَتہٕ کہِ تُہۍ چھُو subjective مطلب چھُ آسان أسۍ subjective because you chose to study this and you chose this particular grandmother بیٛاکھ grandmother کیٛازِ نہٕ سورُے چھُ subjective آسان after everything is said and done even science is subjective and we can talk about that. So but you use multiple methods to make sure that this particular grandmother who you are researching is telling you what you require to tell people how cell phones are changing our senior citizens. So triangulation has been viewed as a qualitative research strategy to test validity through convergence of information from different sources. پَتہٕ چھُو تُہۍ اَتھ منٛز وٕچھان پَتہٕ چھِ 3 قٕسٕم آسان ٹرٛاینگولیشن ہِنٛز یُتھُے تُہۍ ڈِفرنٹ میتھڈو سۭتۍ وٕچھان چھُو نہ أمِس گرینڈ مَدرِ ہٕنٛز ایگزامپٕل تُہۍ چھُو وٕچھان یہِ ڈیٹا چھا کَنوٲرٕج گژھان یہِ ڈیٹا چھا کامپلِمنٹ کران اکھ أکِس کِنہٕ یہِ چھُ بِلکُل ڈایوٲرٕج گژھان تَمہِ سۭتۍ چھُو تۄہہِ پَتہٕ پَنُن ڈِفینس میلان کہِ یوٗ آر ٹیلِنگ دَ وٲلڈ کہِ مےٚ کٔر نہٕ صرف یہِ سٹڈی کینٛہہ مےٚ کٔر یہِ مَلٹی میتھڈو سۭتۍ سٹڈی تہٕ یہِ چھُ میون ڈیٹا تہٕ اَمہِ منٛز چھُس بہٕ یہِ انالسِس کران تہٕ سو اِٹ ڈزنٹ رِمین سبجیکٹِو مگر أسۍ چھِنہٕ یہِ کٕلیم کران کہِ أسۍ چھِ پیورلی آبجیکٹِو یِتھ کٔنۍ جٔرنلِزم چھُ واریاہ لَٹہِ وَنان کہِ وی ہیو ٹُو بی بٹ سوشل ساینس اینتھروپالجی ڈزنٹ ریلی بِلیٖو دیٹ ٹروٗ آبجیکٹِوِٹی ایگزِسٹس اینی ویر وی آر آل سبجیکٹِو پیپل وی آر آل پروڈکٹس آف آر کلچرز اینڈ سوسایٹیٖز اینڈ moral iterations. Slide please. یہِ چھُ واریاہ اِمپاٹنٹ تُہنٛدِ خٲطرٕ اگر تُہۍ کٔشیٖرِ منٛز چھُو ڈِفرنٹ کاینڈس آف ریٖسرچ سبجیکٹس یِم تُہۍ تُلِو یا ٹاپِکس تُلِو رِفلیکسِوِٹی گوٚو پانَس مطلب تُہۍ چھُو اکھ یوٗ ہیو اَ میکنِزم اینڈ اویرنیس کہِ بہٕ کوتاہ اِنوالو چھُس یَتھ سٹڈی سۭتۍ تہٕ اَمہِ کٮ۪ن آوُٹ کمزن سۭتۍ یوٗ کنٹِنیوسلی آسک یور سیلف یوٗ آر کنٹِنیوسلی آسکِنگ کہِ ہو ایم آی اِن دِس ریٖسرچ مےٚ کیاہ سٹیکٕس چھِ اَتھ ریٖسرچ منٛز مےٚ کیازِ چھُ یِہوے سبجیکٹ ریٖسرچ کَرُن تہٕ مےٚ چھا کانٛہہ کنیکشن یُس آوُٹ کم آسہِ اَتھ ریٖسرچ سۭتۍ تَتھ سۭتۍ چھےٚ مےٚ کانٛہہ کنیکشن سو یوٗ آر کاینڈ آف لایک یوٗ رِفلیکٹِنگ آن یور سیلف سو رِفلیکسِوِٹی از بِلٹ اِن ٹُو یور project. So constantly when you are in the field you are locating yourself. For example, if you are, let's say, a person from financially well off, let's say varya lukh chu wanan tat matlab elite, how you want to kind of like describe that, but if you belong to the elite section of the society and you are looking at rag pickers in the society, suddenly as a matter of reflexivity, you will ask yourself, "Ki maine shuni wansid ki rala rag pickers, the people who are picking rags or who are collecting trash, I have nothing in common with them." But you want to study the subject. Let's say you want to, you are doing critical ethnography, and you want to improve their plight. So you will do this, but in a self-reflective mode, you will also tell us who you are, and you will tell us why you did this, so that we see your biases, we see your privileges. And that's kind of the beauty of self reflexivity in a qualitative research, where the researcher doesn't forget who they are. The researcher tells us who they are, what their relationship with the field is, what their relationship to the subjects, to the research participants is. So it's very, very important, whether it be case study, whether it be interviews, you will always tell us who you are. And there will be a certain section dedicated in your book, in your article, where you talk a little bit about yourself. You don't take the center stage, but you take care to tell us what your biases are, what your privileges are while you were studying this. So that also takes away what is known as experimenter's bias. So it becomes so you are telling us that this is subjective research, but at the same time you are telling us, giving us a way to look at it very objectively. So that's something very important. Reflexivity slash positionality. Yeah, even if you want to kind of like do some further research in experimenter bias, it will tell you, okay, this is one of the tools that you use to check your bias, to check your privilege, and know who you are vis-a-vis this research. And I think we come to the end. um, so the advantages of a qualitative research, مش بس مش زیادة ونش ضرورت كي أسوين كي naturalistic setting من شيء كران data collect أشني secondary sources أو برتولان كي it's straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Complex phenomena شيء كان أثمز describe كريت, rich detail منز, we can tell stories. That's another method, narrative method. Again, ethnography is also one of the narrative methods where it tells the story of people. And it's perfect for studying limited number of cases, not like thousands of people. Behako is atmas cross case comparisons karit, analysis karit, agis luck to subset, so that while our research becomes local, it also has implications for maybe similar situations somewhere else. It's always a dynamic and an evolving process. You're not taking something predetermined and implementing it onto the field. No, you're going to the field and telling the field ki, what is it that the phenomena is about. And then you can also produce an explanatory theory, like the grounded theory about the phenomena. And you're very responsive to local situations, conditions, and needs of the research participants. You don't go and you're not an insensitive researcher, ki I'll give you these questionnaires and you have to fill them. No, you go with a lot of compassion, you go with a lot of respect, you build relationships. So whether you want to question कि तुम relationship शा authentic आसान कि data काढने खतर शा आसान सुच सवाल दीगर, but you have to exert all of that. So I feel like in the end you kind of like become this consummate expert in this particular field, and you just not only know the data from that particular situation, but you also know how people are feeling and how you feel about the people. It changes you as much as it changes the people in some ways, the conversation that you're having with each other. So that's also part of the humanistic research. So I feel like advantages, agar is finally it helps us study something that is very narrow, something that is very local, in a very detailed manner, in a very complex manner, and in a very nuanced manner. So while retail marketing research does use ethnography, but it doesn't use critical ethnography, which probably most social science researchers who are researching war zones or studying complex phenomena, that's what they're using. So I think that we come to an end, and the last slide is basically asking questions.
Thank you, Athar. I think questions varia Amit acid. Yum relevant asan the escarotum take up. The first one that I actually liked was the recent question. It's by Inshakram. Are you able to read it on your?
I am.
Yeah.
Can I
So
read it aloud so that I can comprehend it?
yeah. The question is more about my question is related to the area of my interest, understanding the role of women farmers in the food systems of the complex city of Srinagar. I was wondering how implicit and unconscious bias affects qualitative research. How often can our results be skewed? As an example, researchers approach the field with an understanding of existing literature and perceive the research area in one specific way. Ethnographic research observes people, then I can't see more of it.
Yeah, I think I get the idea. Uh, Ethnographic research observes people. I think your mode of working would be grounded theory. Of course, you're doing ethnography, but you're also going to the field, talking to the people, and then you see what they are saying, and then you see implicit biases. करूँ ना तो implicit bias से हर जाए आसान. मतलब our we are we are creatures of perception. Even our perceptions of color. तो छुआ सबज सबज बासा ज़्यादा सबज बासा कम बासा. It depends upon your eyes. It depends upon your culture. There are different cultures who don't recognize the same yellow as Kashmiri yellow because you have a different kind of autumn. You have different kind of pastel yellows in those months. So it's all very contextual. So when you go to the field, you go knowing you're a woman, you're a Kashmiri, and you have to also kind of consider, are you from a rural area or are you from an urban area? Then what kind of financial background are you from? Have you ever done farming? And then ask yourself these questions. I think the first thing that a researcher has to do is to ask questions of, especially a qualitative researcher, is to ask questions of yourself. Why am I even doing this research? Make sure that you, if you're doing this and if you have embarked on this project, make sure that today you open a Word document and you write, why am I doing this project? Who am I in this research? Write about your positionality. Reflect on who you are. It's your research doesn't happen without you. And then that's actually the document where your biases are. So, for example, if you come from a rural background and you have actually worked in farms and you have seen women facing problems that no one really perceives outside, because when we think about rural women, a lot of times all women get asked, women who run societies, run communities, and also produce people, they're asked कि तू शू काम करान, तू शू के नौकरी वोकरी करान, zanchन तुम आसा किंग करान मस करान. So rural women, they are doubly they're in a double bind. A lot of people don't understand कि तुम कोता ये छ मतलब तिहुंद कोता सहार छ rural economy. Garas mans te kam, garas never te kam, livestock sit te kam. So if you come from that background, and if you know about all of that, you will write about that. You will tell us, why did you even get interested in this project? So that document is going to form the basis of who your positionality. And once you start looking at your project and you go to these people and you talk to these women, and you don't only talk to women, you also talk to men, and you don't just talk to rural women, but you also talk to urban women about rural women and their role in community. Because you're a qualitative researcher, you will talk to as many people as possible. And then you will also look at literature, because there is literature. I know of a couple of researchers who have done in sociology department at Kashmir University. They have worked with rural women, and I don't know if those dissertations are published or not. So you will also talk to those experts. You will talk to experts who are looking at Kashmiri society as well. So you have this multi-method situation happening, and then you also have your own self. And in the end, you have a lot of data, and you will go through this data, and then you will keep yourself in mind, your positionality in mind, and that's how you will analyze it. That's how you will reduce the bias, but that's also how you will make your data more tangible and visible and acceptable as scientific. So I don't know. So ethnography is the primary mode of how you should be doing your data, how you should be collecting your data. You should be choosing a particular rural area or several rural areas, depends upon how much time you have, and then choose your people. I don't really think it's a sample that we choose in ethnography, because you talk to so many people, okay, suddenly it's not a sample, it becomes a cosmos or universe of people. So but make sure that you're keeping your positionality and yourself foregrounded as well, because a researcher is affecting the research as much as the research is affecting them. and you are also affecting. So when you go to a certain woman and you ask her about her farming, we think that doesn't change anything. We think that doesn't change answers, but it does. And that's why you kind of keep on triangulating. You look at other factors as well. You look at her friends and you ask them about her. For example, if in a certain rural community a woman is making a lot of money, she's selling cow's milk, or she's selling cheese products and all of that, she becomes your case study. And you talk to her. She's not the only one you talk to. You talk to her family, you talk to her friends, you talk to other women, and then you also consider yourself, like, why am I studying her? What am I getting out of it? So you have this multimodal approach, where the ground is really ripe for grounded theory. And then you will also look at literature, feminist literature, Western feminist literature. Then you will also look at feminist literature of global South, yete situations shasan, and then you will kind of like try to formulate some analysis out of the data and the literature. I don't know if that makes sense, but be very okay that you have a bias. You don't have to pretend that you don't have a bias. We all are biased people, and the more we understand our biases and say we are biased, is more safe for you as a researcher.
Absolutely. I mean, like, Mitri Vishmutyam students approach Chikaran. The idea usually is, guys, was the qualitative research session important is Ashamisha San's idea of neutrality, which is very difficult.
Oh no, we're not neutral.
Rather impossible. You can never be neutral. I think that was interesting example that you use. I also use in my work. Yeah, something like you're presenting your sort of research. Godniki question chas about positionality and how do you navigate with those things. I think so. Example about tea and tea leaves becomes really important in there. Ki ताकि बड़े hacking you research कर सकते, and it's very sort of like rather impossible for you to come off your prejudices or your perspectives or take your person out of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we urge you hamish that in. But however, you can reflect karan timan cheezen pe what you very rightly said. कि तुम कितने छु qualify करा तुम कम छु तुम position क्या छु with regard to the subjects तो क्या power differential छु and vice versa, and then presenting things and then presenting an analysis. That's what's important. And I guess yeah, you said it really right. The Byak Sawal Chu, I say we arrive at conclusions. Maybe this is more related to the grounded theory. We arrive at conclusions before analyzing data in a theory driven method. Isn't it dangerous or is it okay?
We arrive at conclusions, you mean results, before analyzing the data in a theory driven method. I mean, what is a theory driven method? Again, if you're talking about qualitative research, we don't really take a theory and say, "Ki when you time data should guys fit ya theory." So, shuvariya, matlab, I don't think that is what we are talking about. That's a very different kind of approach. It's that those approaches are present in, let's say, a lot of people in political science. Tim cha byak theory tulam pat wichan a certain electoral phenomena somewhere. The panya such as fit, yath fit. That's not how we work in qualitative methods, in qualitative research. Qualitative research means, uh, to this question you should look at the grounded theory slide, sorry, grounded method slide, because grounded theory is the theory that comes out of your data. You're not fitting your data to the theory. It happens the other way around. So yes, I feel it's very dangerous to have a theory driven method. कि मेरे को उसना theory because Eurocentric scientist and this was me used to data kashir mas mele sukar bath fit the patwan bath theory. No, I don't think that is really dangerous. And you know what, I should tell you this, all of you right now, whether you are at the threshold of your research, whether you're in the middle of your research, really take some time and look at decolonial praxis. Tۄہہِ چھُنہٕ وۄنۍ تیوٗتاہ beholden روزُن Eurocentric scientistن کینٛہہ Malinowski یوت چھُنہٕ ییٚمہِ ethnography وۄنۍ تیٚلہِ چھُو تۄہہِ پَنٕنۍ واریاہ لُکھ یِمہٕ non western societiesن منٛز تہِ چھِ تَتھ منٛز چھِ واریاہ Arab philosophers, the Arab travelers تہِ یِمو تِژھ کٲم کٔرمٕژ چھِ ethnography واریاہ برونٛہہ کٔرمٕژ چھِ Malinowski یَس برونٛہہ کٔرمٕژ چھِ. This is kind of like they discover something and then they say ki you won ase. So wünkes şu aksu moku tohe, you can, I don't know how amenable your local institutions are to that, But the international institutions right now, they are people by people like me. أسۍ چھِ واریاہ ڈیکالونایزیشن تہِ کران أسۍ چھِ وَنان دَپان چھِ اگر فیمنزم ییٚتہِ چھُ مطلب اَسہِ تہِ چھُ پَنُن طریٖقہٕ اکھ فیمنزمس وٕچھنَس أسۍ ما آسو نہٕ تَتھ فیمنزم وَنان أسۍ چھِ تَتھ بدل کینٛہہ وَنان أسۍ چھِ تَتھ we see it as a different form of respect or a gendered respect. So there are n number of ways to look at it. So you don't really need to kind of like say ki I have to take a theory and then I have to drive my data like that. I don't think you should be doing that. uh, Try to look at decolonial research, decolonizing research. Maybe, Tosi, if you can kind of like when you're putting this up on YouTube, you can give a few links to decolonizing research. Because I think all of the students here, the time is really ripe for you to do things in a more creative manner rather than following what people in Eurocentric academia have been doing. And we have done that bit of like Tosif has written a lot about, let's say, Rusuk, and suddenly at some point there will be some scholar, let's say in Alabama, and he wants to look at how negotiations happen between government and this. He might take Tawsif's lens of Rasuk, and that came from Kashmir. So in the similar manner, there is this idea of Samud in a Palestinian cosmos, like thinking about I forget the direct translation, but
Halat and all.
halat and patience, like how you deal, like being agentive with this patient approach. Yeah, like in my own work, I kind of think about the idea of asal zana, that also becomes a lens. So you don't have to pick Eurocentric theories to prove your point. You can actually look at the data that you have in front of you and then try to give us a new theory. You can do that. You can really do that. And if your teachers are on board, if your mentors and your supervisors are on board, and if you need any kind of help in thinking through that, I think Pure Online would be very happy to do a session on that. And I also know that individually we can't really, there's like so many students and there's so much need. Individually, I can't reach a lot of people. I know there's a lot of people who will send me their projects, but I can't really go to all of them because we can only do so much students, and then the need is a lot. But so I kind of am asking you, don't only look at Eurocentric research and the ways Eurocentric research has been done, look at decolonial praxis as well.
Absolutely.
So to answer the last question, I don't know if I went too far away, but yes, it is dangerous. You don't really want to take your data and fit it into a theory. Look at your data and see what your data is telling you.
Last year, just to add to this, you say session karan, yung PhD students as select kirmit. Timan thesis na yuhi dapan, and I schedule timan resource up forward. You may personally very important regarding decolonial methodologies. So decolonizing methodology kitab hum now, like this is the initial title by Linda E. Smith. So as usually available थे कि उस Google Scholar वगैरह तथ पे कंति विचित अगर मैं कांस मिलान छ अश पन email ID थोमत या पे comments in mazam थे कि please that पे सु विचित just write an email to us अस करो सु forward या em मजीद की literature us we more than happy to give it. Byak, I think ये सवाल छ too broad for this session. Could you please shed some light on the ontological and epistemological positions of qualitative research? I guess it's way too broad for today's session.
And I think we already talked about its sort of genesis ticker, what kind of knowledges it produces. I think we already talked about that. This is it's a very deeply theoretical question, and I am an ethnographer. I just gave you like 17, 19 slides shedding light on all of this.
I think अगर broadly इस तरह ontological epistemological perspective ची कि युसे इल्म knowledge है युस ID च काच इस करा सोन perspective क्या तौर बाद नु कि यवान कत पेटन च सो idea विचान कित कन च अश अक realist perspective छा relativist perspective छा I guess थोड़ा सा अगर ती तिमन पेटन विचु ना aimic ethic categories realism relativism कि अश छा विचान हकीकत कि युस अक हकीकत च रोज हर एक शायद तिसी हकीकत किन subjectivity छ for instance अगर इस श्रीनगर च कत करो श्रीनगर छ अक reality मगर अत पुलवामिक वाद अत different पट वर्मुलिक वाद different पट कोपवारिक वाद different पट that means अकिस हकीकतस वात न खतर छ वारिया so in order to reach one reality there may be different truths कि तुहद पर्सपेक्टिव क्या कि युस तुई इल्म छु प्रोड्यूस करान या आइडिया प्रोड्यूस करान कि यह एब्सोल्यूट हकीकत कि यह कह सब्जेक्टिव क्राइटेरिया या बे कि I think broad मोट हेकु तुई सु वचित, but then it would need you to go more deeply into philosophy अगर तुई यह थोड़ा सा समझन, which is too broad for today's
No,
session.
I think the easiest way to understand is like nature of knowledge and sort of like genesis of knowledge. And you're very rightly saying कि इस यित कन knowledge produce karan. Agar it's the easiest way for you to understand is like look at the four methods like ethnography, adushto phenomenology, wushto, and then you kind of like see how are we producing knowledge, how is this data being produced in the end, and how am I analyzing it? And I think that's how we can kind of tangibly see it. Philosophically, these are very broad questions, but if we kind of want to plot it onto today's presentation, you're actually looking at how are we producing knowledge, what's the nature of knowledge, and then kind of like location of that knowledge, and as you said, how to apply that knowledge to different contexts. Tim chuna tith kain gasan tim hekan tith kain gasit apply different contexts in game because knowledge comes from a certain location. That's why our world today is in such a chaos because we have tried for the past 77 years. We have actively tried to implement Western knowledge onto non-Western societies, which is why we're having all of these problems.
The one true, perhaps the last question for today is for a good researcher, is it deductive or inductive or both important to follow?
I don't exactly know what you mean by deductive and inductive, but let me kind of like be on the safer side. I think you're kind of talking about inductive, like as in methods. I think uh, is it?
More of like perspectives, for instance, inductively we imply. I switch
Mhm.
Kashibism ki then we inductively imply it to the larger imprisoned. What you said, for instance, ways of triangulation. How do we relate this
Oh, you
specific
mean
body of knowledge to
the
the larger?
convergence or divergence kind of a thing? I think it depends on your project really.
Absolutely.
Whether you, and I don't think you should be deductive of anything. I think it's better to have an inductive view if that's what you're asking about, rather than deducing something from something. So I feel like inference drawing, just converging and seeing complementarities in your data is very important. That's how we do ethnography. I don't know what exactly your discipline is because different disciplines teach us to do things differently. So while sociologists might do ethnography, they don't follow all the rules of ethnography in the same way anthropologists do. So we might be seeing the deductive, inductive in some different manner. But I would say follow everything that you need to so that there is no. So that's something you should be going for.
I think you're very right. Usually you say perspective approach na Kashir mazan ratan क्योंकि इस mainly आसान है कि सब case study based because it's a deep qualitative research इस करांच. However, but larger literature से तंच पे वहाँ interact करन. ब्याक अक इंसान इस कशीर ने बरास या दुनिया किस बेकन कोनस में आए situated. सो क्या ऐसे interested तंस काम परनस में या नेब्रम university क्या ऐसे नहीं होता. यो तामत नोती बड़िस literature से तंच तेमिच engagement है यो. That's why is Shahama ki elis kashir shpara yishes inductively ki emsidan chis induce karan ki larger area ya larger use idea of knowledge that's it kitkin she engage karan agar wo kashir shpara ye catch me dapa yim similar situations shasa. So mainly I think 60-40 she percentage King researchers शासन deductive this larger mazan chkada but एक specific चीज़ कुन वाता. Most of our researches are inductive कि इस साइन case study पे develop करा पछ तक engage या talk करना वा या communicate करना वा larger use literature च body of knowledge that's it. It related to other ब्याक आमुत inductive सीसे then are we not going to land in an ocean if we go by inductive way? Just a short comment please, but I guess we already answered it, didn't we?
Hmm. Yeah.
Beiti Yundi, it was such a joy to listen to you, Dr. Zia, because it was a resourceful talk with a marvelous presentation, as usual. Extremely obliged to you for getting my questions answered. But however,
And thanks to Bilal, I think he's been like a consistent questioner.
he is one of our most ardent and persistent audiences, like one of our partners. इसके हमारे audience is depend online इसमें सारी heavy. So he's one of our best partners for all the times. So, yichu a question which I feel like this would be the last one that we're taking for today, and I think it's quite significant given the fact that, as you rightly pointed, that subjectivity is always at play while we are conducting our research, both from the point of view of the researcher as well as from the side of an interviewee in an ethnographic case, for example. How can we make truth claims when subjectivity intrudes into the research anyway? It somehow dilutes the truth and truth becomes relative. If then truth becomes relative, how can one test the validity and authenticity of any claim among multiple truths claims? Tautology.
One doesn't really. I don't think we have to. I lost the question here, but I feel like making truth claims is not what we should be doing as social science researchers, because everything is so relative. Even truth is relative. They say that all of us are naked at some point in a day. But if it's in a public plaza, you're insane. But if it's you're in a bathroom, you are okay. So it's contextual. So truth becomes very contextual. But then, so but that's like nature of truth and fact. Like, what's a fact and what's truth? And so I think when we take social science research, we don't really go too deep into the philosophy of, as we do in critical ethnography. We really look at a phenomena. We look at political phenomena, ethical phenomena, and of course they do become very philosophical in the end. But I think we can't say truth is relative. Truth is truth. And it takes a shape of fact when you're looking at social science research. It takes the shape of something that's actually happening that you want to talk more about, know more about. That's why most social science research becomes very exploratory as well. So it doesn't become a finality. So you keep going on. So I think it's a very important question. But you also have to consider that we're talking about social science research and not philosophical research. In social science, we know that we have a fact at hand. It means different things to different people, and you see it from every possible angle. And then you're also saying that this is contextual, because everything is contextual. Context in social science research slash anthropology is very, very important. And that really is connected to what you're trying to project, which in your case you're calling truth, and which in my case I might say is a fact.
Absolutely. I mean, you I think idea of epistemology, one ki to
Mhm.
epistemological approach. She usually in the social sciences, yeah, anthropology, ethnographic approaches, which are relativist asan. Shindivan ka axiomatic truth. I think social science yeah, qualitative research is more than truths. Truths yeah, claims and asan ki it's about perspectives. Shindivan perspective, which is representative of a phenomena under given circumstances or under the knowledge that we are sort of like observing or examining. And that doesn't mean कि यही actual reality. Usually, यह qualitative research is statements that must usually qualify करना out of the many perspectives that be, out of the many phenomena that be, ये कहते आसन यम ऐसे साइंस अंदाज़स मज़ या साइन नज़र मज़ आए तिमन मुताबिक छी ये अख चीज़ a perspective in a particular context rather than giving an opinion or a truth to something. So I guess again this idea of epistemological approach to knowledge that becomes very important. And I guess you may is athar azik sawal. And towards the end, thank you so very much. I know how busy
I
you
had to say something. Completely lost as you were saying. I had to say something to what was the last question, that the truth question? You were saying something and I wanted to add to it, but I don't know why it just went away for some
Make
reason.
epistemologies in his cut,
Oh
opinions.
yeah, I was kind of like, I wanted to draw attention of the earlier question too, like the ontology and epistemological question, like to think about phenomenology a little bit, because that's our primary mode of action in a way. Like we want to feel the feelings. A phenomenological question would be like ice cream cho sarni pasand. Magar agar is sarni pasand, like what's the taste of ice cream? How do you feel when you eat it? Kahwa in that mishu bad bappa yaad because those ice cream kya हुआ. Kamen chu variya tarin me shem sit brain freeze gasa. Kamen da pe oh, I feel so, because it will be a different range of emotions, opinions, perceptions connected to the same thing. And I think that's kind of like the nature of social science research. And how you engage with these questions take you back to thinking about these sort of like the phenomenological facts that take you back to whether uh, you're looking at it in a very relative manner, or you're looking at it in a very hard and fast sort of like rule based axiomatic manner. But to nature of cultural relativism, like, or relativism, I think that is debatable too, because there are certain things that can't really change, like certain ideas of justice, certain ideas of fairness. They don't change from culture to culture, and that's where you have to decide whether you want to be culturally relative or you want to be universal. Again, that's a big debate. So right now I would say, if you are in the mode of writing your research project and you are in the mode of doing your project and thinking about कि मैं कुछ method इस्तेमाल करूँ, I would say, like, keep all this reading what you're doing about, like, different methods and approaches, but then look at the question, start formulating your question, because your question is going to decide what kind of method you have to take. So that's the easy route of trying to understand where you're going. So make the question more tangible. Try to figure out what exactly it is that you are looking for, and what is it. After everything is said and done, every research project is a quest. That's what I feel it's a journey of sorts. You are looking for something, and make that a little broad and start your journey.
Absolutely. Athar, towards the end, Bosus Yatan, we talk a little bit about the long-term 101 mentoring. Yum bach plan asan karan next year ya tem pat yum winkenas undergrad final year ya masters that mazanche. Magar plan chuk to do PhD ya maybe global north Hindustan never ya Kashmir never academia smazan gasn khatra. तो तिमन छ mentoring या बे कुन चीज़ ज़रूरत तिम हेकन ऐसे उसमें email already share कर education.pend@gmail.com. Perhaps they heku panun CV to panun ak rough proposal draft as Susan. Inshallah, is karo kushish. We have a battery of mentors. Would you like to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, we are kind of, I mean, it's not in infancy. We have been doing this kind of work for a long time. And I know that my inbox is full of emails, and these hopeful emails where I want to, and I'm sure Tausif too wants to respond to each and everyone, but it's not possible कि one-on-one basis hako SEO sa kaam kare, because we do, but then the demand is so high. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to, like, line up, as you said, a battery of mentors, but we're trying to line up some mentors who we might pair with one of the students. So if you want to reach out to us, uh, and kind of like send us your CV or proposal, and then we talk about it, we can kind of pair you with someone who might be interested in your project. We might be able to do it as soon as possible. It might take a little time, so we'll all have to be understanding of that, because it's not a pilot project. We've done it in different manners, but we want to do it in a very concerted manner, so that uh, you are helping we are helping each other. You're helping us develop a system, and you are being helped in return. But down the line, we are going to ask whoever we mentor through that has to be a mentor to another
Exactly.
person.
Yes.
So because I feel like that's something that it has to be passed on. So inshallah, that's something that we have been talking about, we are working on, and hopefully it should have some concerted results in the next 1 year, inshallah.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Thank you so very much, Athar. They yum vanan is ki ashe palzun ahwe kis har ek andaz mazan yum hisab we can say in halat ya yus we can soon predicament che ashe palzun ahwe kis. To so
Inshallah.
yeah, education the intellectual pursuit kis field is mazan te variya important banan. तो अगर तुम कहाँ इंटरेस्टेड छी यमन ये लॉन्ग टर्म मेंटरिंग की जरूरत छ शॉर्ट टर्म छ आज यम कोर्सेस की वरी डॉट वरी तिथ यन आइडियन पे अगर तुम तीसा पेशेंस छ सबर छ या त्यूता पैशन छ प्लीज एस सूजु पन्ने डिटेल्स ईमेल करो या एस करो रीच आउट इंशाल्लाह we'll try and work you out and pair you with somebody. So yeah,
Just towards the end, Akkat one, because I think most of you are in Kashmir. Ashtu Kashir Chais Adat Hassan. یہِ اوس مےٚ تہِ ییٚمہِ ساتہٕ بہٕ کٔشیٖرِ ٲسٕس اَسہِ اوس باسان کانٛہہ کٲم چھَنا کَرٕنۍ یہِ چھِ پَگاہ کَرٕنۍ یا چھِ کَرٕنۍ کٲلۍکٮ۪تھ یہِ چھِ آسان ہفتَس اَنٛدر اَنٛدر کَرٕنۍ بہٕ چھَس وٕنکٮ۪س تہِ واریاہ لُکھ چھِ دے کاینڈ آف سے کہِ ہے کین یوٗ کانٹرٛبیوٗٹ ٹُو سَمتھِنٛگ بہٕ چھَس دَپان ڈیڈ لاین کیٛاہ چھِ دَپان ہفتہٕ مطلب ویسٹٲرن سوسایٹی اکھ چیٖز چھُ ییٚتہِ اَکُے چیٖز چھُ ییٚتہِ ہیٚچھُن سُہ گوٚو پلینر پلینر تہٕ کیلنڈر بس تِتُے یوت آی تھِنک سو اِف یوٗ آر پلانِنگ ٹُو گو آوُٹ یور پلانِنگ یور ریٖسرچ پروجیکٹ کُنہِ تہِ جایہِ یا ہندوستانس منٛز کٔشیٖرِ منٛز یا کٔشیٖرِ نٮ۪بر کُنہِ تہِ جایہِ انٹرنیشنل لیولہِ پٮ۪ٹھ یہِ چھُنہٕ 6 رٮ۪تھ پروجیکٹ یہِ چھُ باضٲبطہٕ 1.5 ؤری ٹُو 2 ؤری پروجیکٹ تہٕ اگر تۄہہِ گرِکۍ ونو ہے نوکری کتہِ چھو پی ایچ ڈی کتہِ چھو مےٚ دِیِو 2 ؤری اتھ پروجیکٹس تہٕ اتھ چھُنہٕ تَمہِ کم لگان کینٛہہ اگر اللہ تعالیٰ ہس یژھُن آسہِ کم تہِ ہیٚکہِ لٔگِتھ مگر پننہِ جایہِ چھِ آسان باضٲبطہٕ تھاوٕنۍ 1.5 ؤری ٹُو 2 ؤری اتھ خٲطرٕ پتہٕ چھِ آسان تتھ منٛز لُکھ گنڈٕنۍ اتھ نیٹؤرکس سۭتۍ اتھ کاروانس سۭتۍ تہٕ یِم تۄہہِ دکہٕ دِنو سو تتھ منٛز چھِ أسۍ تہِ شٲمِل اینڈ انشاء اللہ if you reach out to the emails that Tausif has already given you and we are able to get this concerted help from different academics who have really expressed interest in helping students inshallah Allah Ta'ala boys near تَمہِ منٛز کینٛہہ فٲیدٕ سارنٕے خٲطرٕ
اِنشاءاللہ ضروٗر بیٚیہِ چھُ یِہوے پٔرسِسٹنٹ ایفٲرٹ اَسہِ چھُ بَڑٕ ڈِلے کران کٔشیٖر منٛز اَسہِ چھُ آسان ہفتس منٛز کانٛہہ چیٖز دیُن تَتھ چھُ پَتہٕ اَسہِ رٮ۪تھ 2 رٮ۪تھ 3 رٮ۪تھ لاگان پَتہٕ چھِ أسۍ بیٚیہِ کران اٮ۪پروچ توٚتام یُس تۄہہِ مینٹور یا ییٚمِس اِنٹرسٹ چھُ تۄہہِ منٛز آسان تِمن چھُ باقٕے چیٖز ذہنس منٛز آسان آمٕتۍ سو تھوڑا پیٚیو تۄہہِ تہِ اَتھ منٛز سیٖریس روزُن پٔرسِسٹنٹ ایفٲرٹ چھِ ٹایملِنٮ۪س چھِ واریاہ ضروٗری یُس اَتھ ٲس دَپان پلان
یُس مےٚ 2 ؤری ووٚن تَمیُک مطلب گوٚو نہٕ تۄہہِ چھُو 2 ؤری لیکھُن پروجیکٹ تۄہہِ چھُ 2 ؤرین ہُنٛد بَناوُن باضٲبطہٕ کیلنڈر کہِ جنؤریَس منٛز آسہِ مےٚ ریٖسرچ کوسچنز سیکشن تیار مےٚ آسہِ فلٲنۍ فلٲنۍ مینٹورس کتھ کٔرمٕژ مارچس منٛز کرٕ بہٕ شروٗع ایپلِکیشنز برنہِ مےٚ کۭتیاہ پونٛسہٕ لگن جی آر ای چھا کرُن ٹوفل چھا کرُن آی ایل ٹی ایس چھا کرُن یا ڈوولِنگوُک یہِ ایگزام چھا دیُن سو آی تھِنک یوٗ ہیو ٹُو ریلی لایک تۄہہِ چھُو کیلنڈر بناوُن باضٲبطہٕ پتہٕ گژھِ تتھ تھوڑا پھیر فرق اورٕ یورٕ نوک پلک آسان درست کرٕنۍ بٹ دیٹس اے ڈفرنٹ تھنگ and you have to make sure that you're writing polite emails to people you don't feel people who are at certain places they've really worked hard to get there so you have to be mindful of their time you have to be mindful of your own time so inshallah I hope that we can kind of like develop a system and you are a crucial part of that
اِنشاءاللہ بیٚیہِ چھُ یِہوے یُس تۄہہِ ووٚنوٕ پلانر چھُ واریاہ ضروٗری لبہِ پٮ۪ٹھ مےٚ چھِ کیلنڈر لٲگِتھ اَتھ چھِ اکھ دۄہ مارک کٔرِتھ ؤریَس
آز أنِو کیلنڈر بٔڑۍ بٔڑۍ خانہٕ آسٕنۍ خبر دپان جے کے بینک چھُنہٕ وۄنۍ کھڑا کینٛہہ وۄنۍ پیٚو اَنُن تہٕ سو یوٗ شُڈ گیٹ اے کیلنڈر پتہٕ ٲسِو تتھ منٛز کران مارک تتھ گژھِ پتہٕ فرق مطلب تتھ چھُنہٕ اِمپٔرفیکشن از پارٹ آف لایف فرق چھِ گژھان ڈیڈ لاینٕز چھِ گژھان مِس بی کایِنڈ ٹُو یور سیلف گِو یور سیلف لاٹس آف کِیر because after everything is said and done it's very important to respect yourself to understand your process and then also get a few mentors here and there who can help you and we are happy to talk and I think it's a good platform for us to talk collectively to people and individually chu variya mushkil gasan I have a lot of emails iman mutalik guilty chas karan feel ki I'm not able to respond to them but then I have taken up other people and I don't know whether to reach out to them but chasan yapar baki kaam te so let's develop a mentoring system yat muz tuh te ٲسِو hissa tuh te hekku pat باقین mentor karit تہٕ أسۍ گژھو بٕڑٕ أسۍ تہِ کرو تھوڑا سا آرام تہٕ تُہۍ تُلِو پتہٕ برونٛہہ کُن اِنشاءاللہ
بیٚیہِ چھُ بیاکھ اکھ لاسٹس پٮ۪ٹھ اگر تُہۍ ؤنِو یوٗجؤلی ییٚمہِ ساتہٕ أسۍ گژھان تہِ چھِ اِن ٹچ یِم اسپایرِنگ سٹوٗڈنٹس چھِ آسان تِم چھِ ایکسپیکٹ کران کہِ أسۍ دِمو فورن جواب تِمن لگن ہفتہٕ 2 ہفتہٕ تہِ ڈِلے یوٗجؤلی بٹ دے ایکسپیکٹ کہِ أکِس دۄہس منٛز ہیٚکِو تُہۍ تِہُنٛد سورُے ریٖڈ کٔرِتھ پتہٕ ہیٚکِو فیٖڈ بیک کامنٹس تہِ دِتھ سو تھوڑا پیٚیو تۄہہِ تمہِ چیٖزُک احساس کرُن کہِ یُس ییٚتِچ زندگی چھِ سُہ چھِ واریاہ آوٕر زندگی تہٕ سٲنۍ یوٗجؤلی یُس اکھ اکیڈمِک آسہِ فار اِنسٹنس اَتھر آسہِ یِمن خٲطرٕ رٮ۪تس منٛز 1 گنٹہٕ کڑُن تہِ چھُ کُنہِ ساتہٕ واریاہ زیادٕ مُشکِل آسان سو تیوٗتاہ پیٚیو تۄہہِ تہِ ریلایز کرُن کہِ آپ کو تھوڑا سا پیشنس اس میں رکھنی ہوگی کہ مے بی تۄہہِ گژھن ڈِلیز یِم تۄہہِ فیٖڈ بیکس یا باقٕے چیٖز دِن فرام د مینٹورس تہٕ سُہ تہِ تھٲیزیو پلیٖز ذہنن منٛز بِکاز دے آر ویری بِزی پیٖپل ایکیڈیمیا چھُ واریاہ زیادٕ بِزی تو yes I think we're done for the day yeah
Yeah, inshallah. If there are no more questions that are pressing, we should be done.
इंशाल्लाह सो अगर बे की क्वेश्चन आसन प्लीज तुई सूझो एस इंशाल्लाह इस करो कोशिश तिमन जवाब आना तो उम्मीद छ तोय आसो एज अ रिसोर्सफुल बासोमत इंशाल्लाह बे के सीजनस मस करो इसी ब्याक सीरीज क्रिएट करने कोशिश तो नए हफ्ते समखो तोय सितन पन्नस बे के स्कूल पैनल सेशनस मजन तो ताम रुजु तुई त खुदाय सवाल इस त खुदाय सवाल अस्सलाम वालेकुम